Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Happy Valentine's Day week. I hope everybody ordered their significant other some nuts.com and bought them a car from Larson Motors.
Jiminy Christmas.
Some Caldera Lab. The whole 9 yards.
Let's just get past Valentine's Day really fast.
But, lots to talk about here. The show, a lot of things to hit on here. And obviously we'll hit on hoops and mailbag later with Abby Barmore. But want to start out with what opening headline of the week for me was Tony White and just the traction his name again received for another significant opening. And I felt like this offseason was kind of the perfect storm of job openings for Tony White. I remember back in the season, somebody asked me, like, what jobs do you think would interest Tony White? I said, well, San Diego State's head job would be one to watch. He was a candidate for that. Ended up being USC's defensive coordinator job was always one to watch because of his connections to the West Coast. We know he was a candidate for Lincoln Riley. And then his alma mater, UCLA, parted ways with Chip Kelly, or Chip Kelly left on his own to Ohio State. And we believe that Tony White was one of 11 candidates that UCLA spoke with. They went with Deshaun Foster, who is currently was a part of the Bruins staff. And that seems to be the trend now in this NIL era, transfer portal era, that you almost have to stay within your system to maintain your roster and kind of keep things going.
There's some guys really benefiting from that.
Trent Bray
really benefited from it. Foster obviously did. If I was counseling Tony White in this matter, I'd say don't take the UCLA job. You're pretty young. That's not a good, it's not, I mean, it's a better job than some, but if you look in the Big Ten, it's not a great job. I mean, their NIL war chest, according to The Athletic, is sub $1 million. It's six.
Which is not much.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I mean, how do you keep your roster together? So they haven't done well in NIL. They haven't recruited well. They have the lowest ranked recruiting class in the Big Ten. They draw, according to The Athletic, they draw 47,000 people per home game. That's inflated. You're at a guy my age would think, oh, UCLA is a great job. No, it's not anymore. It's not a great job. If I was Tony White, I wouldn't touch it. It's probably why Deshaun Foster got the job. He was really low on lists.
He made $385,000 last year.
Yeah, it's a good job for him. But if you're PJ Fleck, well, let's put it this way. PJ Fleck, who apparently was approached and said, no, thank you, looks like Urban Meyer compared to Deshaun Foster. Mm-hmm. He does. I mean, if you stack their resumes, that's like Urban Meyer compared to Deshaun Foster.
But I think the scene when they announced Foster kind of explained exactly why he got the job, where
Absolutely.
You have almost the entire team standing with him, like during his introductory press conference. And so, like, that's, like Sean said, roster retention is almost more important than rebuilding a roster when it comes to these coaching transitions like that in the NIL era. Like,
right.
With the portal opening for, what is it, 30 days after a coaching change?
Yes.
It's like that. Days. I mean, like, that's your roster's fair game for a month.
They really have nowhere to go right now, though.
Yeah, but
their quarter system, though.
Yeah, they would have opportunities.
They could theoretically, go to another quarter system school.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But to your point, I'm with you. Like, there's a lot of shine that whatever was left on that USC job or UCLA job is now diminished, just more than ever now, because that transition to the Big Ten, I think we all agree, UCLA is probably, of those new coming schools, going to struggle the most, or at least have the hardest time adjusting to this new conference and life of the Big Ten.
You want to do something fun, Sean? Pull up UCLA's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Look at their schedule. It's the hardest schedule I've ever seen in college football. I'm not kidding. Robin will do it. I've never seen a
harder. Must think they still have Troy Aikman playing there.
I've never seen a harder schedule than UCLA's 20.
All right, Robin,
all right, so they open at Hawaii,
okay,
and then they get a week off.
That's not horrible, but that's not great.
And they're home against Indiana, at LSU, home against Oregon, at Penn State, home against Minnesota, at Rutgers, at Nebraska, home against Iowa, at Washington, home against USC, home against Fresno State.
It's the hardest schedule I've ever seen. That's ridiculous.
Michigan's is pretty ridiculous this year, too.
I'd put Michigan's up
Would
there.
you? This one's sneaky hard because of
Just look at the degree of travel.
because of November. Exactly.
They're going from Hawaii to Rutgers,
Right,
in the span of like 2 months.
and Fresno State's at the end of the line.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. They're not going to win many games. That's a terrible schedule.
Well, and they lost Dante Moore. Dante Moore was the 5-star
Right.
quarterback that Chip Kelly brought there. Guess where he went to? Oregon. NIL.
Be the backup.
And, so their NIL pot, as Steve Sipple said, if it's under $1 million, well, Dante Moore's going to probably get more than that at Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a context, Nebraska's paying a quarterback more money than UCLA has in its entire pot. Dylan Raiola.
So like their UCLA, you have to think, a lot of schools do this thing called roster value where every player gets something. And, like you can't do that with that little amount of money.
You wouldn't think so.
No.
So no, it was imperative. Robin's right. The kids jumped around Deshaun Foster. They wanted him. He was a sounding board for the kids on the roster. When the job opened, there were players that reached out to the AD and said, we need to hire Deshaun Foster. Players have a lot of power in these things right now. What if I think his name is Martin Jarmond. What if he went outside and hired Tony White? The reaction wouldn't have been great, probably, because these kids wanted the in-house guy.
And I do believe some of the assistant coaches had just recently received new titles and received new deals.
2-year deals.
So
2-year deals.
Whoever got that job, is already kind of stuck with a built staff.
Exactly. They got 2-year deals.
And that's a deal breaker for a lot of big names.
Oh, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think a lot of big names were going to turn that down. I mean,
especially
probably did turn it down.
Well, and I mean, you think about when Tom Osborne was replacing Bill Callahan, he told candidates there are certain coaches that will be a part of the staff, and Jim Grobe didn't want that. Remember?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was kind of a deal breaker.
And he said there's 3 or 4, and it worked. I mean, they wanted those guys here, but Osborne said these 3 or 4 guys, because Osborne's big thing was always to keep continuity with something, and keeping the continuity with the offense was big for him because Callahan's offense is big. And then he wanted some Nebraska flavor in the staff.
That's right. The UCLA job, why do I keep saying it's not a great one? I remember Jay Norvell when he worked there as an I think he was an offensive coordinator. He worked as an assistant, and he would talk about how the assistants, not the head coach, the assistants had to live so far away because he couldn't afford to live in Westwood on an assistant salary. If you're making $300,000, you can't afford to live in Westwood. Head coach can, assistants can. He was driving an hour to work every day, hour to work and back. He would get up. I'll never forget the conversation. He'd get out of bed. He'd get up at 3 a.m. I mean, he had to get. That's how he had to do it.
They didn't have a training table. They might now, but
that's bad.
They, like Rick Neuheisel, former UCLA head coach, has talked a lot about his experiences there on his radio show. And, like at Nebraska, when the players walk off and they have shish kebab on sticks and shakes and drink, like none of that kind of stuff.
No, I bet maybe they do now, but
a scaled down version.
What I would tell you is this. Nebraska is a much better situation than UCLA.
It's a Ritz-Carlton compared to like a Fairfield Inn.
It really is. I mean, that's the way Nebraska fans should look at this. And that matchup next year, you really like Nebraska now. You should really like
late
Nebraska.
In the year, weather,
new coach on the other side.
And who knows?
Who's never been a head coach, by the way. Never been a head coach.
And did they get UCLA back-to-back years, Robin? Or do we not know? Do we know the 25 opponents?
I don't know that, Sean.
I mean, that's a break if they do.
Yeah.
Because it will take Foster, if he gets it going, he's not going to get it going in year 1 or 2.
Well, the thing is,
a high level,
they have 3 straight 8-win plus seasons. I mean, it's not like it had gone off the tracks completely.
2025 Nebraska ends the season at UCLA.
Good.
That's a
good.
Well, they have Iowa.
Well, that's not true. These are
just in order.
They're just dates. Listed. No dates.
Just
yet.
listed.
Okay.
But
sorry.
I think those November West Coast games on the road, they're primed to be night games because they want night games.
Absolutely, Sean.
And you don't have to deal with weather.
No, it's perfect.
So I think Nebraska USC, I would be shocked if that's not a night game this year.
Oh, me too. But yeah, if you're Nebraska and if you're feeling down or you're feeling skeptical. Just consider how well off you have it compared to UCLA, because it's much better.
Hey guys, briefly, we did hear from Glenn Thomas as well this week, Nebraska's co-offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. We know Glenn Thomas is not calling plays. He's a part of the collaboration of the offense with Matt Rule, with Marcus Satterfield. And, I'd say that the press conference, none of us were really surprised. I think we kind of expected a very colored inside the lines type performance from Glenn Thomas. He wasn't going to go up there and be Mark Whipple talking about coaching Tom Brady in the Pro Bowl.
Whip. Yeah, it's a little different situation.
He's a different, we got a different version of the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback coach, because Mark Whipple coached the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterbacks too.
Yeah, and Whipple was a much different hire. I mean, they hired someone in Glenn Thomas who will work with Satterfield, that will speak the Satterfield's language, that respects Satterfield. Whipple came in and spoke his own language.
Threw a chair in the locker room.
Yeah, all that stuff. And he had his own way of doing things. And it didn't matter what Donovan Raiola wanted, or Mickey. Hell, it didn't matter what that interim head coach wanted.
Barrett Frost barely.
Right. So it's a much different situation. But I think my main takeaway was he has a very strong working relationship with Satterfield, based largely on a situation that was very similar at Temple, when Satterfield and the Temple offense really struggled bad in 2014, and Rule made a change, took the quarterback coaching away from Satterfield, made Glenn Thomas the quarterback's coach, and the offense got better. The program got better. It went from 120th nationally in total offense to 96th. So it wasn't great, but they played complementary football like Rule wants to do. The defense was really good. It was a top 25 defense. So he knows bottom line, long story short, he knows what he's getting into here, and he's comfortable.
All right. When we come back, I want to talk about the NFL Combine. No Cornhuskers invited to the Combine. Are you surprised? We'll give our take on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett here, as I want to talk NFL Combine. But before we get to that, this segment of the Husker Online program is brought to you by our good friends at nuts.com, a Steve Sipple office staple here, by the way. You raccooned your way through our entire supply.
One bag. I had one incident with a bag that I didn't open particularly well.
It was multiple bags.
They have the reusable thing you tear off and it seals and can be reused. Well, Sipple was not well trained in opening those bags and just tore it apart.
Yeah, there's some issues there.
But nuts.com, great place to load up for things, pantry staples, things for your office.
Look at those things.
And it's not just nuts. I mean, tons of great snack options, pretzels,
dried apricots,
you name it. And we've got a great deal for Husker Online listeners here. Simply go to nuts.com/Husker. Spend $29. They're going to give you free shipping. They're going to give you a free gift as well. That's nuts.com/Husker. Spend $29 or more, and they will give you a free gift and free shipping. And the prices are really reasonable, honestly. When you go through here and look at the options and what they have to offer, the pecan, the toffee pecan
clusters,
the cluster. Oh no, here you go. Some milk clusters.
The clusters are gold. Those are ridiculous.
Those don't last a day here. They're gone.
No. Because Robin attacks.
Yeah,
the interns show up on those.
Let's just be clear on something. Robin attacks the clusters.
Yeah, like a badger.
Yeah, you do. I noticed it. You had to get to him before Robin.
But check it out, nuts.com.
Sean, you aren't exactly like I don't know. You hit it pretty hard too.
Hey,
you do.
Great sponsor on the program.
It really is.
All right, let's get into the NFL Combine. No invites for Nebraska. Who are we talking about here? They got snubbed. Luke Reimer, linebacker. Omar Brown, defensive back. Quentin Newsome, defensive back. Robin, am I missing anybody?
Nori
Newelly, yeah.
Newsome's the big one to me. I'm really, frankly, surprised that Quentin Newsom didn't get a
with the
combine
number
rep.
of reps he logged.
Mhm.
And I will tell you from our interviews with him, remember, Rob, that summer 21, was it, when we were doing all those interviews? There's no question he's geared his life to being an NFL corner. Now, this doesn't mean he won't be an NFL corner. He'll get the Nebraska.
Which all three of those guys,
Yeah.
maybe four.
Reimer will have a shot.
We'll get undrafted rookie free agent deals.
Yeah. But Newsom not being invited, that really hit me. I'm shocked by, almost shocked by
The pro day at Nebraska is March 20th, tentatively right
It's
now.
a big one.
Yeah, it will be for those guys. It won't be a huge one.
Yeah, I mean, for them.
Yeah, for them. It's not Randy Gregory working out.
Sue's
back in the
not
day.
working
Right. But I for those guys, it's big. Newsom's got to have a day now. That's the thing. And so the same with the other guys.
And it should be noted that that's the initial invitations. Now, all those guys have to accept and then not get hurt or pull out of the combine for whatever reason. So there's a chance spots could open up and a chance that any one of those guys could get a late invite, but the initial list did not make it, which is mildly surprising. I mean, Newsom's the big one. Omar Brown, I thought maybe had a real outside chance just because of what he did at the Senior Bowl. He got a lot of attention there.
Okay.
And you thought that maybe he put himself
The Shrine Game, not the Senior
Shrine
Bowl.
Game, sorry, on the radar a little bit more, but I guess it shouldn't be stunning just considering what that group was compared to other NFL talent.
You couldn't throw. I mean, the teams really couldn't throw very much on Newsom. I just wonder how far away he was from an invite.
Well, people in this conference didn't throw very well this year. It wasn't a great passing. It was probably one of the worst overall passing years in this conference at Nebraska. I mean,
the offense is just.
You take out Jeff Brom, you take out Paul Chris, you take out Scott Frost. I mean, just look how far a lot of these offenses fell.
Yeah, wasn't a good, especially in the West, right?
I mean, those three offensive guys I mentioned, you can. I mean, they elevated offensive play in the West for sure.
But yeah, it's not great to not have anybody. It's not the end of the world. There'll be a lot next year. I mean, Nebraska will have guys in the combine in 2025. Rest assured.
Well, and what does that mean? There's 259 draft picks, I believe. Actually, he's at 256 this year.
Okay.
So 321 players make the combine. So if you make the combine, you're not even a guaranteed draft pick.
No, you're not.
And they're saying that the Nebraska players are below 321 in a 256 player draft, at least right now. And that's humbling. And I think it's a reality. It's a reality check about where the program has been the last few years, where there's not been a lot of Thursday, Friday draft worries. If you cover Nebraska football, it's mainly been a Saturday deal, and you don't even know for sure.
That's it's what you don't want to do is go too far with this, though. Nebraska's pretty good. It's not a bad roster. We're going to talk about it in a second, where a win projection. I don't feel like we're covering a bad program right now. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good roster. But these guys we're talking about were pretty good players.
But the separator is for where Nebraska wants to be. What's it missing?
Yeah.
It's missing pros.
High end.
It's missing the Jimmies and the Joes right now. They got good players. They don't have elite players.
That's it. We talk about that a lot, and you're exactly right. All Americans, all conference, even
first round draft picks.
Yeah, and when I say all conference, I don't mean third team, and I don't mean second team. I mean first team, all conference.
No, you can look at this team this year, and I'm not saying they have first teamers for sure, but Nash Hutmacher, Ty Robinson, they're going to knock on the door of some of these things.
I would think so.
Omar Brown will knock. Not Omar Brown. Tommy Hill, Isaac Gifford. I mean, they've got players.
Is anybody on offense, Sean?
On offense, that's the better. I mean, no. I mean, I think you could make a case for possibly one of the transfer receivers,
right. Maybe Ben Scott.
And I'll say Jamal Banks only because he was second team All ACC, so he's at least a proven all conference guy joining this team. But on the offensive line, maybe Bryce Benhart
as for sure. I would think he'll be a combine guy next year. Ben Scott looks like a combine guy. You can name Robinson, Nash. I don't know who else in the linebacker core, but I mean, we just ripped off four guys I would think would be combine invites next year.
And the the pool,
Fedoni, maybe.
the pool of players is still fat because of COVID. Like we have to
Right.
get through the 24 and the 25 season
Good point.
to eliminate the 2020 free year.
Yeah.
Because people that arrived in 2020, freshmen, that didn't count. So then they got 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So Bryce Benhart and that group, they were redshirt freshmen, and they got to be redshirt freshmen again. So I think once we get through 2025, it will be interesting to see how things evolve when that COVID year is pretty much out of the game.
It'll normalize a little bit. If I were a young guy, I would watch this. I'd look at the Newsom case pretty closely because it illustrates how hard it is to play in the NFL.
Or
Reimer. Yeah, Reimer's. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
one of the
Reimer
top
too.
tacklers in program history.
Right. Yeah, like third, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second or third. You're right, Sean. In program history and total tackles, it's hard. It is hard to make that league. I mean, it's you got to be really good.
Like JoJo Jolman still is hanging on, but I think if we were talking man to man, would you take Dolman or Reimer?
Ooh,
I'd take Dolman.
So
Would you?
Because of the plays and things that he did and the consistency he played
He
with.
could cover. That was the thing. Remember, at one point he was a nickel in his career. I mean, there was a nickel that got beefed up and could play inside. Reimer can't cover like JoJo. JoJo could cover a slot receiver. Am I wrong? He could cover a slot
in the
receiver.
Ohio State game.
he did.
Yeah.
He did. And think about that play he made where he did like the baseball slide and he got up and tackled. I mean, the Ohio State game was, and JoJo's on the active roster still with the Tennessee Titans.
It's probably comes down to when you talk about JoJo or Reimer, what you're asking of them. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
JoJo's special teams makes him far more valuable, in my opinion. With the limited roster numbers in the NFL, you got to have a guy that can play multiple spots.
I find myself defending Reimer here. Reimer could play specials.
Not as well.
I
as
think
JoJo.
the biggest thing with Reimer is health too, like his durability with
Yes, that's an issue.
sports hernia, leg
Oh,
injury,
yeah.
shoulder. I mean, he's had multiple things over the course of his career where he's been very banged up.
Yeah. Newsom, on the other hand, he's not had a lot of injury problems.
Mhm.
Something cropped up like a stinger late last
Mhm.
year. Remember that?
Mhm.
But he's been pretty healthy.
How about
Surprised. I'm really surprised by this.
next year? Like if Deshaun Singleton puts a year together, he could
Could be
be.
a guy.
I mean, he was as good as anybody they had before the
Really
injury.
tackles in the box well.
Mhm. He's
So
got that
yeah,
size too.
I do think next year will be a lot busier with draft coverage.
I do too.
So-
4 or 5 guys probably in the combine.
All right, when we come back, let's talk about next year over under win totals. That's next.
Yeah.
You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. And before we get into some Big Ten over under win discussion, Steve Sipple, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by who?
Larson Motors. I don't know if you guys have noticed. It's been gorgeous outside. I don't know what would stop anybody from taking a nice drive to Nebraska City if they're looking for a new vehicle. Go for that experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. You know the brands: Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. It's never been easier to find them all in one lot. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. I say it every week. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right, guys, let's get into Big Ten over under win totals. They were released by FanDuel this week, and
FanDuel.
I was on with Andy Staples this week, and he's just like, God bless FanDuel, because they literally gave us like so much content with these early over-unders. And I don't think any of us are surprised that Ohio State and Oregon have the 2 highest over-unders. And this is 12 games only, not playoffs and other games, at 10.5. So Oregon and Ohio State are the odds-on favorite to win the Big Ten and to make the college football playoff. And, winning the Big Ten next year will be a big deal because the 4 highest ranked conference champions get buys in the playoffs. There's 4 power leagues and then the 1 group of 5 bid that would go into the playoffs. So if you win the Big Ten, you're going to get a bye in the playoffs.
A first round bye.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So Oregon and Ohio State are, today what they're saying are the two teams. I think Michigan at 9.5 is high.
I do too.
If I was putting down $20, I would say Michigan is more like an 8-win team.
Unders 100. They look like an 8-4 team to me. I mean, they lost, Robin. They lost a ton. They lost a ton off their staff. They lost a ton of personnel. Nebraska. How about Nebraska in the FanDuel? What do you call this, Sean? Projections?
Over under. Yeah, they have the win totals are at 7.5 on Nebraska, which in the old Big Ten West days, I mean, Iowa's 7.5, which, by the way, Iowa's low. Like Iowa,
they're always low. They're always
and
low.
they, for some reason, they're not doing whole numbers.
God, we agree, Sean. How about Nebraska though? If you're a Nebraska fan, you look at this and go, wait a second. Nebraska's projected same as Washington, over under wise, same as Washington, the national runner up, same as USC. Makes sense to me. USC overblown, but you got to feel good about it. Maryland at 7.5. Man, that's respect for Loxley.
They're a team that in this new Big Ten, not having to be locked in every year to play Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan.
Oh God,
they're going to flourish.
Huge.
I mean,
Rutgers and Maryland just got to feel like new.
They've
like they got a
up.
new lease on life.
They've bumped up a weight class.
Yeah, they got a new lease on life. You know, because you're right. They were locked into the a horrible division.
They're playing for 4th place every year.
God, Nebraska. If you're a Nebraska fan, you got to look at this and feel good. I mean, it means nothing, but it is off-season fodder. And you're over under win totals the same as Washington
and Iowa and USC.
Let's see.
So what do you think? You taking the over under on Nebraska?
God dang it!
Right now on February 13th,
7.5 is perfect. It's 7 or 8 to me. 8 if it's a good year.
I'm going to go under and say 7.
Yeah, it's either 7 or 8. It looks like it.
7's kind of where I'm, because I don't want to overserve and underdeliver either, because I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they won 7 games.
Because we're not in a position to overserve right now.
It has been 2016.
But they haven't had a first 7 like this since 2016. Remember the first 7 of 2016? It was Indiana. It was Purdue.
Oh, yeah.
It was Illinois. They had to beat Oregon, though. That was a tough game.
But that was a down Oregon team.
And they didn't have the big horse either.
They got up to 7-0.
Who was a big running back? Royce Freeman. They had him for about 3 plays.
So they got up to 7-0 that year, Nebraska, and then they were in the top 10. And then they went to Wisconsin, lost in overtime, and they could have won that.
The schedule is the reason why that number is what it is right now, because on paper right now it does look favorable. I mean, as far as compared to other teams, I think Nebraska's got a pretty good draw.
Well, they do.
But
they do, Rob. It is some of that, but also remember 11th ranked defense in the country last year. It's 11th ranked defense in the country. We're talking about Tony White for a reason. They got a lot of those guys back. They got Dylan Raiola. And you don't figure Nebraska's going to have 25 turnovers from the quarterback position next year.
Hope not.
Right.
The Colorado.
Oh, God, don't. Yeah.
The Colorado game early is so big again.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Just to kind of bring it home. Because if you can get in Northern Iowa, obviously, and UTEP are on there, but if they could get to 3-0.
Colorado game's gigantic.
I mean, it's huge. And I think Rutgers is a sneaky game.
It is. It is sneaky.
Kalimanis is that get the name?
Kalimanis
is the quarterback.
Former Minnesota.
That they brought in from the portal. I mean, they kind of had to go TJ Maxx route for their portal quarterback, and they got. I mean, he's good though. I mean,
I'll be damned, Sean. He did it again. What's wrong with TJ Maxx?
Nothing. I mean,
you get good deals.
Get the 3-year-old Under Armour stuff there. You know. Stipple's like, that's my place.
It's just hitting pretty close to home right now. Hey, now wait a second.
Kohl's Cash.
Or you know what, a lot of the I got Kohl's Cash.
Greg Schiano used up his Kohl's Cash to get Kalimanis.
Levi's, I mean, they have an incredible stock of Levi's at Kohl's. Yeah, they do. Now, I got to get on track here. You know what this comes down to again? The conversation is always going to be close games. You just have to win a bunch of close games.
And so how do you feel? Obviously, you have a high-profile quarterback, but he's a true freshman. How do you feel about a true freshman going to Indiana and winning a game in mid-October?
You don't think they'll blow out Indiana, right?
I'm just saying, like, those are the games that, like, if for Nebraska to get to 7.5, you got to win those. And I don't know enough about Dylan Raiola as a college football quarterback to confidently say they're going to be X games improved from last year.
How would you know?
It's got to see it.
Yeah.
What I like, though, is it's the first time since 2019 Nebraska will open a season at home.
Yeah.
It's the first time since 2019 they'll open the season against a non-Power 5 team.
Big.
Do you understand what that has done to Nebraska football the last 4 years?
It's derailed their season before it even gets started.
And a place like Nebraska, when you open on the road and you lose, all of the wind is knocked off the sail.
A lot of it, yeah.
Everyone's upset, panic alarms.
Oh, think about the Illinois game when Frost lost that in Champaign and the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That
was the feeling that
was
day.
Not a good Illinois team.
No,
it wasn't. It wasn't. And that
think about the game in Ireland.
Oh God, those are disasters. Those are disasters.
Well, I would say the Ohio State loss
last year kept them out of a bowl game.
Yeah,
the Ohio State loss in Columbus. Yep. They played well for 3 quarters against a team that played for the national title. Like, you looked at that Ohio State game, like, okay, this team can compete.
Okay,
and then they ended up not being able to win more than 2 in a row all year. They went 3-5 and voted not to go to a bowl game.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Yeah,
it should have been probably a 6-2 type team.
What was the final score of that Ohio State game in the COVID year?
It got out of hand.
And I always felt a little weird about the reaction to that loss. And it was one of those moments where I was like, this program has really dipped because we're trying to sell this as progress. And they just got whipped. I mean, what was the final score?
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, it was a rout.
Well, and
okay, it was a blowout.
52-17.
It was 52-17, and we were trying to sell it as progress
because they had that big play from McCaffrey right out of the gate.
Right.
Like, oh, here we go.
I always remember thinking that week, oh boy, this program has dropped.
We wrote up Casey Rogers as he was like the next coming of
Steve Entman.
Because Casey Rogers, he looked good that day, but
great.
Well, then, the Penn State win of all the wins of the last 10 years, the Penn State win in 2020 was as much fool's gold as any win Nebraska's ever had.
Yeah.
They had no business beating Penn State.
No, they didn't.
And, McCaffrey somehow won that game.
Fool's gold.
That was not, the punt almost got blocked.
They almost had a punt blocked and nobody even
talked about
it. Yeah. It got blocked.
Sean, what was that guy's name? The quarterback that started for Penn State, who wasn't.
Shoot.
I can't do it, Sean.
All right.
I thought his name was Sean
Clifford.
Sean Clifford.
Sean Clifford. That's exactly right.
He threw all those picks, and then lo and behold, Will Levis comes in. This guy that ends up being a first-round draft pick.
I know this is gonna be really obnoxious, but I'm gonna pat myself on the back. I told the guys, Parker and those guys, they'll verify it. I was like, this guy's good. Will Levis can play.
It's basically just like a Tebow out there, just sledgehammering on QB draws.
Live arm, tough runner. I was like, oh God, this guy's good.
But that was kind of the fluke when you watch how bad Nebraska's O-line got whipped that game, and they figured out a way to win that game.
Yeah. But you're right, Sean. The openers have really been
derailed.
Nebraska has not had early season momentum in God knows how long.
Right. All you got to think
16.
about is the way you guys and the fan base felt like after that Champaign game or after the Ireland game. Oh my God, it was a gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
You had guys up at the podium in tears.
Because they knew.
And Frost, think about how badly Frost managed the Illinois game in Champaign.
Terrible.
When they lost that game. They came out in a different, Illinois comes out in a different front, and Frost says that, and that was the problem.
I'm convinced, at that point, Frost, it just felt like he knew it wasn't going to work. He knew that Trev really wasn't going to back him, and things just kind of turned in 2021. Just never really.
Oh, you know what else? Okay, you know what else I remember? That
22.
This conversation. What goes with this conversation? We talk about first game disasters after that game in Champaign. I've never really talked about this with you guys. What I'll never forget is how pissed off the players were in the interviews. There was anger. They didn't want to talk for obvious reasons. And it wasn't like they were down. They were just pissed. And it wasn't a good kind of angry, I didn't think. It was like, this is bull crap.
Well, and finally they're going to open with a manageable game. Now the next year, is that when they open with Cincinnati at the El Toro Bowl?
I believe so. I don't know.
But this is a welcome.
Yeah,
20
August 30th.
So August 30th,
Yeah.
2025
Lucas
is the El Toro Bowl.
In
Bowl.
Indianapolis.
Yep. And
Yeah,
we will get T-shirts made for that by that point.
And we will go to El Toro.
We're
Hell
gonna
yeah.
we're gonna do a live show from El Toro.
They won't even know who we are, and they won't even want us in there
Sir.
unless you're gonna buy the margaritas.
No, it's not like they don't play college football on the screens in there.
They're gonna have a birthday margarita deal where they have the snare drum and they're just like banging it right in the middle
they
of
have
the
like
show.
rodeos on their TV.
Oh yeah,
Like Mexican rodeos.
Yeah.
The real stuff.
Yeah, the real stuff.
the 2025 El Toro Bowl in Indianapolis.
They should call them
El Toro is
incredible.
Oh my God.
When we come back, Abby Barmore will bring some sanity to the show,
Yes,
and we'll
thankfully.
take questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Stipple, Robin Washington, Abby Barmore, having some good laughs behind the scenes here, as we always do at Husker Online. But it's time for the mailbag. Lots going on. Abby, where are we starting off?
All right, first one. Based on what we know now, what do you think the starting lineup will be for the offensive and the defensive lines for the spring game?
Well, center Ben Scott, right tackle
Ben
Hart, left tackle Prohaska. I don't want to assume, but I think Mazuka would have a good chance to be a guard as long as he kind of gets things cleaned up, whatever that is.
Absolutely.
And Justin Evans Jenkins,
Yep.
or
Latofsky. Henry Latofsky will have a shot. But I'm glad you said Justin Evans Jenkins, because he was the guy in there after Ethan Piper went down. So yeah, those would be the guys.
Corcoran is out.
He will not. Yeah, he will not
He's out for the
participate.
spring. Might be out for fall camp. He might be out for the start of the season.
Yeah, Turner
depending on how
Corcoran. That injury is serious.
Changes things.
He will not be in the spring.
Sam Sledge is a dark
Mhm.
horse to watch. I do think Sam Sledge could make an impact.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they're pretty deep at tackle, not as deep at guard.
Yeah,
that's
The two guard spots are the only real question marks right now. And then defense,
Okay, defense. Yeah,
obviously Ty,
Isn't it as
Nash.
simple as Nash, Ty, and
Lenhart,
Linhart.
Linhart? What about Jamari Butler?
or Bowler.
It's kind of
It depends how you do it. I mean, it depends how you start.
I
the
almost forget about Linhart.
game. Boy, I don't.
No, I felt like I felt
How?
like down the stretch of the year
Yeah, because he's hurt.
he got hurt,
Yeah.
and it quieted down for him.
Quieted down.
And I felt like Jamari Butler kind of emerged as the guy they wanted him to
Yeah,
be.
no, I'm glad you mentioned Butler. I mean, Butler's the
Mhm.
kind of guy that you could see in a combine. I mean,
Yeah.
he's that good. They're really good up front on defense.
Nash, Ty, and then a combination of Linhart and Jamari Butler.
That's why that 7.5 number that FanDuel put out, when we talk about these guys, I'm glad we talk about it, because then you realize, okay, yeah, they're pretty good. Nebraska's
Mhm.
pretty good.
Mhm.
They got some dudes.
All right, next one. Who is an under the radar 2024 recruit that you've got your eye on?
Oh, don't do this to me.
Now I got to pull up the scholarship distribution chart here to make sure I don't forget anybody.
And don't say Dylan Rayola.
No.
Yeah,
He's
he's very.
not under the radar.
Any of those receivers?
I think Quinn Clark's Keelan Smith is definitely.
Keelan Smith's a great one.
Quinn Clark's got a lot of ability and potential, but Keelan Smith, Ian Flynn at tight end intrigues me.
Okay.
I mean, some people had him as a 4-star. I have a hard time saying O-linemen just because I know O-linemen really aren't made to play at a young age right now in college football. On the defensive backfield, I think in the secondary, it's hard to call Mario Buford a sleeper.
He's not a sleeper. That's why it's hard, Abby, because what may be a sleeper to somebody is not a sleeper to somebody else. It's a subjective. So I would say I don't mind. Tamua doesn't get Tamua does not Preston Tamua does not get talked about that
And he's a
much.
4-star.
Right. But he's not a guy that comes to the tip of people's tongues very quickly. But we saw in Hawaii, that's a good picture there. He can play.
Yeah, if things at guard kind of go haywire, let's just say something doesn't work with Mazuka,
Mhm.
and Corcoran's hurt, all of a sudden, like he could be in that. A young guy would have the opportunity to maybe get in that guard conversation.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily talking about this year, but I think down the line he looks like a guy that just has starter written all over.
Well, McGahee too. I mean, people forget about him. I mean, there's some talent, but again, it's really hard right now for young players to play.
Just how old, especially on defense, how old they are on defense. I mean, it's a lot of veteran snaps and experience you got to surpass.
There was not a household true freshman name in the Big Ten last year.
Right. Yeah, Sean, I think you're talking macro, and you're right. It's hard to play in the Big Ten as a young guy unless you're really, really precocious and developed.
Yeah, there's no Terrell Pryor or, young freshman guys like that. And the game's older. I mean, these players there's another year of players that are crammed into the rosters right now.
What's sort of interesting is Raiola does have the physique to do it. I mean, he's big. I mean, 6'3", 230. I mean, he's got the size to handle it.
All right, next one. What position group do you think will see the most regression from 2023 to 2024? And which group will see the most progression from last season to this season?
Receiver will see a lot of progress, a lot. And it has to. I mean, the leading returning receiver in terms of catches, I believe, would be Alex Bullock. And that's 12. Okay. I mean, the leading Kemp averaged 8.5 yards per catch. That's not going to happen for your leader. He was the leading receiver. He doesn't return. He was the leading receiver, averaged 8.5 yards per catch. That won't happen again. Probably not for the foreseeable future.
I think linebacker is the one that stepped up. I mean, you lose Reimer.
Are you saying step up or step back?
Step back.
Yeah.
You lose Reimer. You lose Henrich, who was a captain. Those are your two biggest leadership guys, or are two of the bigger ones. And then even like a Garrett Snodgrass, depth and experience he brought behind the scenes. I think that's is the position group that took the biggest hit. I mean, Quentin Newsome and Omar Brown, but we can name off the 5 starters in the secondary right now, and I don't feel like that's a big drop off.
Yeah. What about? I mean, you're bringing pretty much everybody back, but what about offensive line? I think regress or progress.
I'm going
to say progress.
I'm going to say progress for sure.
Mazuka for Nuri is basically what you've done.
Right. It doesn't mean it's going to be leaps and bounds better. It was pretty good last year.
But inherently, it should be better because you're bringing everybody back.
Yeah, better.
And you have a better schedule.
Yeah, I think we got it. I think receivers would be the receiver positions would be the area you'd expect the most dramatic improvement, numbers wise, the way it looks, the reliability. And then I think Sean's right. Kind of the inside linebacker spots are the one you wonder about a little bit.
Think about the O-line and the continuity they could possibly build early by being at home, not playing on the road and sold out Power 5 games to start the year. They could really develop a nice continuity. Like Bryce Benhart has never started a home opener at home.
That helps. All that helps. Now you'd think those guys, Sean, due respect, they shouldn't be affected by going on the road at this.
But it's tough though. I mean, you go on the road with a young quarterback. Think if Dylan Raiola was a starter at Colorado and at Minnesota to start his career.
That would be tough for the quarterback, but for Bryce Benhart, he's 24 years old. I mean, he should be able to handle about anything at this point.
All right, Abby, we got time for one more. What do you have?
Our last one. If you could have dinner with anyone famous, dead or alive, who would it be?
So we've eliminated, like, if you have like a deceased grandparent or aunt or uncle or parent, because that would make it tough. You'd almost be obligated to
celebrity, famous
celebrity.
person.
Okay.
God, this is hard.
I would like to have had lunch with Bob Devaney.
Okay.
I've never obviously met him. I know his son very well. Mike Devaney lives in Phoenix, and did a long, extensive interview with him for my book this summer. But
Bob Devaney,
if I'm staying on Husker lore and topics, Bob Devaney would have been an interesting guy. It would have been a pretty fun guy to have a few cocktails with.
Are we narrowing it to Huskers?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
Anybody?
Abby.
Okay. Jesus.
Okay.
Wow, what a call.
I mean, think about the conversations you could have there.
I was not expecting you to go biblical, Robin.
I mean, just saying, if you're picking one person,
yeah,
it's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
You could clear a lot off the docket with that one.
He might have declined my offer. God, Robin, that's a high bar.
I said Bob Devaney. He said Jesus.
Well,
I mean, come on.
get out of your shell.
Jesus.
Jesus.
We're a sports talk podcast here.
You said anybody.
I know.
Anybody.
Okay. What do you want me to say? Like
Say a sports guy.
Denzel Washington? Like,
You went from Jesus to Denzel. You have
We
high
take-
regard.
you take
You have high
Jesus
regard
to-
for
You can
Denzel.
take Jesus to eat at Laszlo's?
yeah,
Or, I mean,
Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, I think Jesus would be fine at Laszlo's. Fine.
Yeah,
He'd
you
be
can
fine
do it.
anywhere.
So Denzel?
No. I'm sticking with my answer.
Okay, Jesus. I was just gonna say Muhammad Ali.
you say Mary?
Good one.
Hey, that's a
I
good
was,
one.
I was gonna say Muhammad Ali. It'd be fascinating.
Okay. Sports, I'll go with Lawrence Taylor just because I want to hear his stories.
Lawrence Taylor.
Favorite football player all time growing up.
Would Bill Parcells be on your lunch list, or would he be just
he'd
too
be-
grouchy?
Too grumpy. With LT, I know I could throw back some cocktails, smoke cigars, and just listen to him talk about his
Oh, that could get really out of
how
control.
wild the 80s were.
Yeah. Ali, for obvious reasons, I shouldn't have to explain it. He's my all-time favorite athlete.
Makes sense.
What about you, Abby?
And you're gonna ask me.
Yes.
Don't judge me. But I bet you can guess what I'm gonna say.
Taylor
Taylor
Swift.
Swift.
Taylor
Oh.
Swift.
And
AJ?
would
Yes.
Kelsey be invited?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Jason, maybe.
Okay, actually, Jason Kelsey is a great pick because I love that dude. He is so funny.
Oh, you like him?
Did you see the picture
He's so
that went
funny.
viral at the Adele concert? Scott and Jordan, our friends, were
Mm.
in the background with Jason Kelsey, like at the same concert at the Super Bowl.
So you might go with
Little
Jason Kelsey.
Well, I would put him a close second. I'm still gonna go Taylor because she's an icon and she is a very smart business lady that people don't see
Okay.
that side of her. But
Okay.
I'm sticking with it. But Jason Kelsey is hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
He kind of won the Super Bowl weekend.
Robin won this round, though. Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah.
Shoot for the stars.
Literally.
That was
All right. When we come
Robin,
back,
that was beautiful.
Thank you.
when Robin
bless you.
finishes his
Sermon for the
lunch
week there,
with
everybody.
Jesus,
Yeah.
um,
I'll relay what he says.
That just
he'll loop in Joe Lenardi to get the latest on Nebraska basketball. As we'll talk Nebraska basketball with Robin and their tournament chances next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, final segment of the program. And before we get into some Nebraska basketball talk, want to get this on the air. Crushing blow for Nebraska softball, and we feared the worst when this injury happened, and the worst is now a reality. Jordy Bahl, Papillion La Vista native and All-American pitcher, transferred from Oklahoma, tore her ACL in Nebraska's season opener against Washington. The game was in Mexico. Out for the season. Just a crushing blow to a softball season that already had over 3,000 season tickets sold. And nobody will get to see, obviously, Jordy Bahl play in Lincoln this year with the news of this injury.
she'll come back. She'll come back strong, though, and I
I
imagine
would get a red shirt for this year, I would think.
get a red shirt for this year, and then I would think be ready in time for next season, right?
I would hope, yeah. But just a tough blow for, I mean,
Oh yeah,
the
For her.
lit for her, and I mean,
Yeah, huge blow.
Rhonda Revelle and the program.
for everybody. This is like Aaron Rodgers Jets stuff, where
Yeah.
like all your hopes are,
good
or
comparison.
so many of your hopes are putting on one player, and then they don't even make it through the first game.
Yeah,
brutal.
and just a injury, non-contact,
Yep.
just not that. I mean, there's some contact in softball, but just kind of a freak injury. Weird, just pitching came down on it. Wrong.
For more coverage and on this, make sure you go to HuskerOnline.com. Abby Barmore will keep you up to date with the latest on where Rhonda Revelle's team turns. But let's pivot now over to Nebraska basketball. The Huskers got one of their better performances all year and one of the largest crowds, Robin, I believe we've seen in Pinnacle Bank Arena. I think the actual crowd was 15,700 and some, and we know the capacity can't be any more than like 15,999.
Mhm.
So that was a packed house for that Michigan game,
It was.
and they came out ready.
Yeah, Saturday home games are so valuable for that very reason. And you saw, I mean, Nebraska obviously took care of business right out of the gate with probably the most impressive 15 minutes of basketball you're ever going to see. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
30-point lead.
And it got the crowd rolling, and yet, things kind of went in cruise control from there. But yeah, that shows you what, especially when you looked at the schedule, that back end of the schedule with 4 of your final 7 games at home against favorable matchups, including the occasional Saturday home games. That's a big deal. And so that was an example of what that home court advantage can mean for Nebraska and has meant for them all season long.
It was 43-13.
Oh.
I mean, you're right. Nebraska, it was like the Harlem Globetrotters against the Washington Generals.
They couldn't miss.
Game. No, they couldn't.
I mean, has Juwan Howard ever taken a beating like that? I mean, been down by that many points?
I doubt it.
I mean,
I doubt
in his career. I mean, that's pretty hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're down this year, but that was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're down, but they had just beaten Wisconsin. I mean, I just tip my cap to Nebraska. They just looked so good in that first part of the game. I mean, yeah, you would have liked to see them maybe pull off a little bit more, but I mean, what?
Still won by 20,
right? I mean,
what do you want?
I wasn't. No, I know.
They just had a hold serve basically.
I wasn't nitpicking it at all. Seriously, the first K-State was unbelievable. Alec came out of the gate really strong after having
which was important.
Yeah, 0 rebounds against Northwestern.
0 points.
0 points. Yeah, Fred got to him in a good way because right off the bat
he doubled that production in the first minute.
Yeah, he had a dunk on the first possession.
2 offensive rebounds and a dunk.
Yeah. So, and K-State was really good early. I mean, he couldn't miss.
It all came together.
Yeah.
When he has like a 15-point burst like that, where he just goes bang, 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 they're pretty much unbeatable.
Well, and that's what Fred said. I mean, it's like that's the ideal picture of what they think this team can be when everything is clicking the way it should be. That's what that first 15 minutes was, and that's what it can look like. Problem is, as we've discussed a lot, is consistency has been a bit of an issue. So that's what we're looking ahead into this week. They finally got their first off week of the season. They were the last Big Ten team to have one of their 2 scheduled 6-day breaks between games. And so, yes, it's much needed. Just like Josiah was saying, his ankles are really bothering him right now. Like everybody's just beat up and worn down from this grind to this point. So having a week off is really important. But you're coming off a really impressive win where you looked as good, at least for the better part of the game, as you have all season long. Now you got to do it again. And you like the key now over this final 6-game stretch is you got to hold serve at home. Like I'd probably put that number 1, because losing to Penn State or Minnesota or Rutgers, that puts you in that potential for a bad loss. And they don't have a bad loss on their resume right now. And so I guess you could do 1A is hold serve at home, and then 1B is find a way to win at least 1 road game to at least get that stigma of going over in conference road games off your resume. So they're going to have opportunities to do that. They're favored right now on KenPom to beat Michigan. They're favored to beat Indiana on the road, and they are a 2-point dog with a 46% chance at Ohio State. So 3 very doable opportunities if they can play anywhere close, even like a fraction of what they did for the first half of that Michigan game. They can beat anybody in this conference, and they can certainly beat the remaining 6 teams on their schedule.
They are something else at PBA. I mean, like a top 10 team.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like Michigan, that's a top 10 team you're looking at. I mean, to lead Michigan 43-13 is something you'd see a top 10 team
like
do.
Purdue would do to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. They are strangely good at home.
Bracket talk is obviously really prevalent, Robin, and Bracket Matrix is a really good website to kind of track numbers. And right now there are 94 bracket projections. Nebraska is in the field, Robin, in 92 of the latest 94 brackets. The Matrix has them as an 11 seed with an average seed right now in the brackets at 10.39.
Yeah, which is about right. Thing is, there's still work to be done here. So like this is all just projection, assuming they do what they're supposed to do. And right now, I mean, you would expect them to hold serve at home, just given how well they played there all year and the level of competition that's coming to Lincoln. But then the key is, you gotta pad that resume with road win. And if you can get 2 road wins, which again, they're favored right now on KenPom in 2 of those final 3 road games, you find a way to get a couple of those, then it's done. And you're basically playing for seeding going into Minneapolis at the Big Ten tournament, as opposed to trying to secure a bid. So that a very important still 6-game stretch here. And the brackets, they're fluid. They change seemingly by the day. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into them, but certainly it's good that Nebraska is getting the benefit of the doubt. Whereas you go back to 2017-18, every single game they were having to prove themselves and say, this is why we belong in the field, where now they have to play themselves out of the field at this point.
That helps.
Nebraska was like SMU right now. SMU has a good RPI and numbers. They have no quad 1 wins and really no quad 2 wins, right, Rob?
Say that again.
SMU.
Oh,
like they were like a team like that, you know?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like there were some metrics that favored Nebraska, but the ultimate quad 1, quad 2s.
right. They had 0.
Where
Their best win was against Michigan at home.
Where Nebraska has a legit quad 1, quad 2 body of work, and they have not lost any 3 and 4s.
Yeah. And so that's where I say the quad 1 wins, like I don't even know how many more opportunities they're going to have for one. Maybe Ohio State on the road. But beyond that, there's really not many more. So now you're looking at just holding serve and avoiding those bad losses. The bad losses hit you just as much as good wins benefit you. So like, just think of it that way. Like winning these games you're supposed to win at home, like that's just as important as finding a way to go beat Purdue, because then you're avoiding adding more negative to your resume as opposed to adding positive.
Northwestern's a 9 seed on the matrix, and they're the 5th team. Nebraska is the last Big Ten team at the 6th team in as an 11. And I mean, I don't want to get greedy because the tournament spot's a tournament, but I would almost rather see Nebraska as a 10 or an 11 than a 9.
Why is that?
Well, because you're playing an 8-9 game and then you're playing the 1 seed.
Like, you'd have a shot. I mean, I think as a 10-7 or an 11-6, that's every bit of a chance of a win as an 8-9.
Oh God, yeah. Nebraska's a scary NCAA tournament team. They're scary.
I'd be nervous if I got Nebraska in a 6-11 game.
Oh, look, I mean, and if people think we're crazy, just think about the wins. I mean, think about what they've done. They beat number 1 Purdue. They just 43-13 against Michigan. They're scary. They're scary when they're good.
Well, and these Big Ten teams know how to guard Casey.
Yeah,
and they're allowed to guard them in a very particular way.
A neutral site tournament game, and you've never played Nebraska, he's a tough guy. I mean, he'd be a really tough guy to guard.
I got to tell you, that Illinois game is what swung me. Like, I know they lost, but Illinois is good. I heard one commentator, by the way, which I wish I knew his name. He put Illinois in the Final Four, and I'm like, wait a second, they don't have a point guard. They don't really have a big.
Wasn't it Hummel on the call?
No, it was some national guy. But anyway, that game told me a lot. Nebraska looked every bit as good as Illinois to me that day on the road. Didn't win, didn't finish.
That's the thing about the whole road thing right now. Everybody's saying Nebraska is so terrible on the road.
They
should have beaten Illinois.
Yeah.
They were 9 seconds away from beating Illinois.
They should have beat Illinois.
Yeah,
they should have beat Rutgers.
They should have beaten Rutgers. They played Minnesota. They dominated Minnesota for 20 minutes.
I don't get into it quite as much. I don't.
So I mean, like, think about if any of those 3 games go differently, a possession differently. You're talking about them being a surefire tournament team as opposed to being on the bubble.
And we're not talking about any kind of road hex or they're weak on the road. I don't. The Illinois game is what swung me.
And Huskers will be at home Saturday, 11 a.m.
early tip.
So you got to bring the juice.
Yeah, you do.
Against a Penn State team that's tricky. You know why? Because they're the only other team in the Big Ten that's going to depress and try to be aggressive on the ball the way Maryland was. So they're going to remember what happened at Maryland. They swarmed Nebraska, and they had no answer for it. Their guard play was atrocious, and they turned the ball over a bunch, and the game was never even close. Penn State's going to try to do the same thing. So they better be ready.
Yeah.
And the crowd, I mean, hopefully the energy at 11 a.m. will be what it was that we saw at 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday.
No, that's a good point, Sean. That's something to watch.
It's a little early to get cocktails going at 11, beers going at 11 a.m. People will.
Yeah, and it's a meaningful game. It's a game Nebraska has to have. Again, like this, because this will fall into the potential for a bad loss game.
All right. Plenty to cover and follow here with Nebraska basketball. No one does it better than Robin Washut. If you're not a member of HuskerOnline.com, make sure you take advantage of our great special right now. It's the best deal you're going to find anywhere. Get 2 months of Husker Online for $1. You got to use promo code NU1 at checkout. 2 months for $1. Get all the great coverage and access for Abby Barmore, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for another edition of the Husker Online Show.